Hello, hello, everyone. How are ya? Some of you I'm seeing twice in one day. That's super exciting. And I really cannot wait for the time change when it's light, when I have to do calls at 7 o'clock at night. I'd much rather have some natural light. Okay, how's everyone doing tonight? Let's see, you all probably know where the chat button is and all that good stuff. We are going to dig into a lot of information about adrenals, which is one of my favorite topics. Not because I like to experience problem with my adrenals, but I have problems with my adrenals often. So I know this topic really, really well. Okay, let me know where you guys are tuning in from. I think we have lots of different states, maybe even some different countries. So maybe put in the chat box where you are tuning in from. And just a reminder, so use a chat box. I can't promise that I can keep an eye on it and keep an eye on everything else at the same time. So I will do my best. I think Wendy's on too. So she sometimes, Maryland, Colorado, me too. Wendy does a great job keeping an eye on the chat as well. And she's always like, Jody, what about this question? Texas, big day today for Texas. Michigan, Missouri, what do we have? Yeah, all over. I love it. California. I'm going back there in a couple weeks. I'm really excited. Ooh, Australia. I knew it. We are all over the world. Okay. So, and then if you can, I will definitely kind of try to keep an eye on managing the background noise and stuff. But sometimes it is hard to have a train of thought and try to think about those things too. So if you can, try to keep yourself on mute until you want to unmute yourself. This is totally, I really hope have time for Q&A. We really should. I'm gonna probably breeze through some of this stuff. I do encourage writing notes. There'll obviously hopefully be a recording if everything goes well, so that's good. And yeah, so let's dig in. I think we have everyone taken care of. Okay, so let's dig in. I felt like first it would be really good to do a little bit of an overview, just a basic overview of like, what are the adrenal glands? We have a lot of people coming in at different levels of knowledge, different levels of experience. We've got people who might be brand new to this natural lifestyle, and some of you guys that might have been exploring this your whole life. So we'll do a little bit of a review, and then we're going to kind of look at the adrenal glands and like the whole endocrine system in a little bit of a different way than maybe you have thought of it before. I am a huge fan of looking at the whole picture, right? Looking at the entire body. And sometimes actually and I feel this myself, we can get frustrated sometimes because we know that, I think we know when we understand there's root causes to things and we want to try to find those root causes, but sometimes it can feel like we're going sort of like blind, right? Like, what is it? What could it be? I don't know. I'm trying all the things. And so it can be helpful to really look at how systems play off of each other to give us an idea of which way we want to go. And I always remind everyone too is a couple things. Obviously, good gut health is really important. This is not going to be a gut talk, but everything I talk about really does come back to the gut. So right off the bat, one of the first things that we can really ask ourselves is, am I taking care of my gut? Am I being consistent with my probiotics? Am I doing things that are adding a lot of good stuff to that area of my body? Or am I doing things that will potentially cause harm or strip it of its good bacteria, right? So gut health is always really important no matter what topic we're talking about. It really is the foundation to everything in our body. And then the other piece, and sometimes I think it's the piece that's not really talked about enough, is this intuition piece, right? This can be very different for people who may be coming into this like, gosh, and this would be me, probably 12, 13 years ago, where I was like, I grew up in allopathic medicine. I grew up going to all the traditional things you would do and kind of living inside that box and using the Band-Aid approach and all that stuff. And as I started to really explore other options, there's that intuition piece of us that isn't taught, and we don't experience that when we're really walking through traditional allopathic medicine. And so I think that's super important in anything that we're talking about too, because your intuition is going to tell you so much, right? And this is where we can start to find our way through the weeds, is listening to our intuition. It's sometimes as simple as I tell people, it doesn't really matter what oil you use. Like, what do you want to go grab? And just use it and put it wherever you want, because it's going to do something for you, right? So we want to be really, really digging into that and getting better at listening to our intuition. And the way that we do that is through practice and consistency. So those two pieces I think are really important before we would talk about any organ in the body or any system in the body. But when it comes to the adrenals, I do absolutely have, unfortunately, a lot of experience with this. I'm not going to say I'm proud of that. I am the queen of overtaxed adrenals, but that also means I have a lot of experience of some things that I've done for it, and a lot of research that I have done to just see sort of what's going to work for me. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be your formula, but this is where we listen to our intuition, we practice, we're consistent, and we make sure we're taking care of our gut. Okay, so your adrenal glands are really these pea-sized glands on either side of our lower back, right above our kidneys, okay? And they are, so when we're talking about the endocrine system, there's more involved. When you think of endocrine, sometimes you think of just hormones, right? Well, that's true because nearly every gland we're going to talk about in the endocrine system has a lot to do with our hormone production, right? But the endocrine system is something that starts all the way from our emotions all the way down to our ovaries or testes if we're a male. So it's more than just talking about the adrenals. All of those play off of each other. And we'll get to that in a second. But your adrenal glands are actually involved in producing about 50 different hormones. And these hormones are critical to sustaining life, right? So that means we really want to take care of our adrenal glands because they have an important role in our hormone production in just everything that that's going to play off of as well. Okay. They also work really closely with the hypothalamus. So we'll get up here in just one second, but I want you to remember, and we talked about this earlier today in a different part one that I did with adrenals. But this is the HPA axis, right? So you have your hypothalamus and your pituitary. So hypothalamus, pituitary, and that's actually where a lot of this stuff starts. So we're going to actually travel up to that area rather than focus specifically on these little pea-sized organs that sit above our kidneys, because it's important that we understand how the process even starts. Okay. So when we're looking at the adrenal glands as a whole, their role, and this may be familiar to you, is obviously in a stress response. Okay. So this is the fight or flight. And I know you guys have heard this before because um, you felt it. You probably feel it. My guess is consciously we feel it a few times a day where we have this sort of jolt and our heart goes a little bit faster. It could be that you're at the stop sign and you're ready to go, and another car and you jolt. Right, that's an example of a tiny, sometimes not so tiny, fight or flight moment. Okay, our child, my children, by the way, they get hurt all the time. I don't know what it is, but I wish I could wrap them in bubble wrap. So they fall down the stairs, and I don't mean like a hard fall, but they slip because it's carpet. And so constantly where I'm having this sort of like, okay, is somebody hurt? Do we have to go to the hospital kind of feeling, right? That's a stress on my system. My adrenals are going to kick in and it's going to cause a fight or flight, just like that. By the way, I'm going to do a little caveat. I am home alone. My husband had to take my older son to basketball practice. So if you have commotion in the background, if somebody gets hurt, I just told them I can't respond to you. I'm doing a call right now, but I don't know what's going to happen. So, anyways, your brain. Okay, so now we're coming up here, right? So your brain is going to register a threat. Now, this doesn't always mean it's a severe threat. This is even, by the way, guys, a daily stressor, a daily emotional stressor. It could be somebody in your life that's a stressor to you, right? It could be your job and you're daily in that position and you're daily in that environment and you're getting this low level of chronic stress all the time. So your brain registers this threat. So emotional, mental, it could even be a physical threat, right? Your adrenals go into action. So you've got this thing happening up here. It's actually starting a lot through our eyes first, right? It can even happen through our nose. All of our senses can create a fight or flight, and they trigger our brain, which is going to actually, if you picture sort of this, think of this just like going down all the way to the adrenal glands, right? And so your adrenal glands are going to spur into action, and that's when they're going to release cortisol. And cortisol and adrenaline hormones really are there to protect you. Okay. Now, here's the thing. They're designed. Okay. So the way that this response is designed is obviously in a scenario where it is an extreme threat. This is why cortisol is kind of called the death hormone, because in an extreme threat, our bodies are so beautifully made that this is meant to happen to actually protect us to sustain life. right? So that we don't die in some type of threat situation. Now, it's interesting because you think about, in my mind, I kind of go like, okay, this could be an extreme threat. I hope that never happens to me, but I get it. My body is beautifully and wonderfully made, and that's there to keep me alive, right? Because those hormones are also playing with your immune system. It's getting blood to rush to your brain, your heart, your muscles. All of this is to keep your body alive in a threat. But now think about this, because that doesn't happen, hopefully, ever. Think about this though. What if we are in a constant state of low level stress every day, right? Then what does our body do? Because now you have something that was designed for an extreme threat, for an extreme situation, and we're putting it in that cycle every single day. So now imagine what that does to our immune system. It lowers our immune system. In fact, our immune system is going to kind of lower traditionally anyways when we have cortisol, when we have that fight or flight response. So the reason why that happens is because, again, it's a protective measure to help us stay alive. So it's going to slow our digestion. It's going to slow our immune system. All of that stuff that is necessary for immediate survival. But I want you to not think about that, because that is hopefully so rare that that happens. But what we are dealing with on a daily basis as a culture is we are dealing with it happening on a low level every single day. And all of that adds up into becoming a lot of stress and taxation on our adrenal glands. Okay. So think about that as we're talking through this, because it's not just the immediate fight or flight situation. It is this chronic stress. It's this chronic, anxiousness. It's this whatever the emotion is, whatever the trigger is, whatever the stress scenario is, it's happening constantly on a daily basis. So it's constantly causing a fight or flight to happen. And our bodies cannot sustain that chronically for a long period of time. So it's important to remember it's kind of like that low level of inflammation. And when we have that consistent low level of inflammation, that's going to have a bioaccumulative effect on our body. Okay. All right. So, what are overtaxed adrenals? So, let's just talk about this really quick. And so, this occurs as a result of daily stress. We talked about that, right? And really adrenal insufficiency. So, I would term that as like our adrenals aren't getting nourished the way that they need to. Really, that takes some lifestyle changes. We're going to get to that at the very end in terms of actual protocols, ways to begin this so we don't feel overwhelmed, kind of the baby steps process and the whole lifestyle approach. But adrenal insufficiency and daily stress. So cortisol that is released from our adrenal glands, right? So remember, that's what's released in that fight or flight scenario, and it helps to regulate our blood pressure. And when we're stressed, and these adrenal glands are continuing to release this cortisol constantly over time, we get into this scenario, right? A lowered immune system. So that can leave us open to things that we may not want to be left open to. It just doesn't put our bodies in the best case scenario. I mentioned before already, kind of it slows down our digestion a bit. Not necessarily a bad thing, but this is where we can also not feel our best in our tummy. Our guts and our guts or our tummies actually give us a lot of clues as to how our body is functioning overall, right? And this is oftentimes in our guts where we feel this fight or flight, where we feel the stress of daily life. Like we can feel it in our tummies a lot. And so when we experience this low level of stuff happening every day, our adrenal glands are just going to not produce what they need to do on a daily basis in a healthy way. They're going to have that continual shot of stuff coming out, and that's not what we want, right? We want to have just nice, even keel. That's what we're going for. Okay. Now, one thing that I will mention as well is that when it comes to the adrenals, this can be really hard to find information when it comes to traditional allopathic medicine. In fact, I've personally run into quite a few scenarios when I was first researching some of this where there just wasn't a lot of knowledge that those doctors had. There wasn't a lot of belief in adrenal fatigue or taxation of the adrenals, and there wasn't really an easy way to get to an answer. So this is where I would encourage you guys, and I think we talked about this maybe in a different call when we were together, but really widening our circle of practitioners, right? So sometimes, again, we're all coming from different places, we're all coming from different learning levels, but if you have not considered looking at medicine or healthcare a different way, and maybe looking at an osteopath or a naturopath or a homeopath, even a chiropractor for some people is definitely stepping outside of the box. Some people have never been to a chiropractor. So start thinking about, okay, if I keep running into blocks, if I keep running into a situation where I feel like I'm not getting any answers, or somebody's not listening to me, or somebody's not believing me, then that's probably your intuition telling you, right? We're going back to that intuition, probably your intuition saying, hey, maybe explore something else. Maybe go try somebody else. And I know some people live in really small towns. Maybe things are an hour, hour and a half away. I'm here to tell you there are so many practitioners that will meet with you online, and they do a phenomenal job. So I just have to say that, because when it comes to this topic alone, we run into a lot of blocks sometimes, and it's not just adrenals, but we can run into this when it comes to other things that we're searching for answers for. And I'm just a big believer that having as many cheerleaders in your corner as possible is the best thing and the best way that we can find answers. So when it comes to adrenal taxation, here's how we're going to think about it. Wired but tired. Okay. Now, what do I mean by wired but tired? And I'm not sure. I feel like somebody maybe mentioned something in the chat about that. I can't remember. I saw something flash by. But this is how I would describe my example or my experience with adrenal taxation. And it is this wired but tired feeling. And here's the interesting thing, guys, is we actually can get addicted to how the wired and tired feels. Okay. So think about this. I go to bed, and actually I have to start this at night, because at night is where this cycle starts, and this is where we can get in this evil cycle of wired but tired. Okay, so let's take tonight, for example. Normally, I'm not having to use my brain past 7 o'clock at night. Okay, so I'm putting all this energy out here. I'm gonna get energy back from you guys. I'm gonna get done with this at 8 o'clock, let's say, and I'm gonna be a little wired, right? I'm gonna be a little wired. It's gonna be maybe a little harder for me to slow my brain down and go to sleep. And so we can get this feeling of like, well, I'll just stay up for a couple hours. I'll just I got a lot to do. I got some energy. I got a little boost of energy. So I'm going to stay up a little bit later. No big deal. I can maybe sleep in for an hour. I can take a nap tomorrow. No big deal, right? So then we go to bed, let's say at midnight, and I'll just pick midnight because most people don't go to bed past midnight, but it's kind of the midnight mark, right? I mean, there are some people, and I used to be that person, but let's just take midnight, right? When we normally, our body and our melatonin production from our pituitary gland, we'll get to that in a second, wants to start into action and getting our body ready for bed, getting that melatonin production going, for sure no later than 10 p.m., but it starts around 8 p.m., okay? So I go, I got some energy. I'm good. I'm going to stay up. And then I go, well, I got to wake up at 6 or 7, right? Got to get the kids to school, all this stuff. So I essentially got, I thought, 6 hours of sleep, because I wake up at 6 a.m. every morning in order to get the kids out the door. So I think I'm getting 6 hours of sleep. I'm cool. I wake up, I'm like a little groggy, a little tired, but then what do? We reach for our caffeine, we reach for our coffee, or our tea or whatever. And we're drinking our coffee and we're like, ooh, I got a little boost of energy. I'm good, right? I'm good. Well, then what happens? Around 10 a.m., you're like, want a freaking nap at 10 a.m., right? And so you're like, okay, I'm gonna have another cup of coffee. Time for my second cup of coffee, right? And so we drink some more caffeine, or we do some of the things to give ourselves energy, and we get a couple of little bursts of energy there. And then around 1 or 2 o'clock, for me, it used to be about 3 o'clock, literally can't keep my eyes open. Cannot keep my eyes open. But I'm like, I can't take a nap at 3, because then I'm not going to want to go to bed at 10 o'clock and I'm going to stay up till midnight, right? Because I took a nap at 3. So then I go, okay, I got this. and you're just like, it's the point where you're like so tired you can't keep your eyes open. And I don't know if you've ever actually been driving your car at that time and you're like, okay, this is not good. So you hit this wall at like 3 p.m., right? And then the whole cycle starts again because you go home. Maybe you even took a nap because you're like, I can't even stand it anymore. I gotta take like a power nap. So maybe you took a nap. Well, now the whole cycle starts again because now it's 9 o'clock. You know you should go to bed, but you're like, I'm ready. I'm ready for the day. Let's go to the grocery store. Let's do this, right? Because you get that burst of energy again. And then you die the next day again, right? So you're constantly in this cycle of I call wired but tired. And that can be addicting, you guys. That actually taps into parts of our brain that is like a drug addiction. We can become addicted to that feeling of being wired, and our brains can trick us into that cycle that we can sustain it and we can't. And that's when our adrenals start to really go, I'm done. And for me personally, I know when I'm getting into this cycle, I get a massive frontal lobe headache. Okay, it's almost I've actually never suffered from migraines in my life, but if I were to describe probably what a migraine feels like, that's probably what it feels like. It's almost so bad I mean, you for sure can't keep your eyes open. Um, I don't really have light sensitivity with it, but it's so bad right here that you can't even stand it. And and sometimes you can even start to feel really sick to your stomach and things like that, right? But you can't see straight. I mean, it's so bad you can't see straight. So for me, that's how I knew when I was really in that cycle and I needed to stop that cycle because you just can't function. Like you truly can't function. And so that kind of is probably a little bit more of the severe end, but those are clues that our body is giving us to say, hey, come on, let's go. Let's get out of this hamster wheel of wired but tired, right? And we can, okay? Um, some other common themes that happen with adrenal taxation are things like nervousness, okay? Because that's part of that fight or flight. Is we get that cortisol burst all the time, constantly, and we're like nervous, okay? We also can have the opposite, right? Chronic fatigue, chronic tiredness, because it's going into that tired phase, all right? We can get things like it can affect our hair, skin, because that's all part of hormone production. And this is definitely affecting how our hormones are working. We certainly can feel stomach pain or loss of appetite just because everything else is off. Um, and I think sometimes in some of the more severe cases, and this would actually, I have actually experienced this, is the like you want to vomit because the headache gets so bad and you're just so out of it, and it's just your adrenals are trying to do what they need to do, but there's nothing left. Okay. And so then you can start to feel really nauseous to your stomach. And that has definitely happened to me before. Okay. So where do we start from this? The first way that I want you to think about your endocrine system and how we're going to actually travel down to the adrenal glands is we're going to start first up here in our limbic system of our brain. So the limbic system is part of the HPA axis. So this is what's going to house the hypothalamus. And this is really incredible to think about it this way. And it blew my mind when I started to look at not just my adrenals this way, but also my thyroid and my sex organs, like my ovaries and, things like that. It's because everything, think about it, everything comes from some type of emotional stimulus, right? So that emotional stimulus, it can be an old traumatic experience that's resurfacing. That's absolutely possible. And I think that happens a lot. But it can be emotional stimulus every day, right? It can be that low level of stress or that high level of stress that's happening every day. And so where our brain starts with this HPA axis in our hypothalamus is actually housed really deep in our emotional brain. So we really have to look at first, okay, what is the stimulus that I'm receiving every day? How is that interfacing with my brain? How is that being housed in my hypothalamus? And then what happens from there, right? So your hypothalamus actually sends messages to your pituitary gland. Now, this is really interesting because depending on the emotion, depending on the emotion. Your hypothalamus is going to send an order. Think of it like the general. The general is going to send an order to the captain or whatever. I'm not in the military, so I'm going to get that wrong, but you know what I mean. Whoever's under the general. um, and so it's going to send a message that's going to either be good or bad, right? So not every emotion is bad. There could be a happy, really feel good, joyful emotion that gives us chills everywhere. And that could be a message sent to the pituitary gland, and the pituitary is going to react with some really good hormones, right? It's going to react really well, and it's going to send those messages then down to your thyroid. Or it could send a fight or flight symptom, a fight or flight trigger, a fight or flight emotion to our pituitary gland. And that's when things can go haywire, right? And especially if our pituitary is not well taken care of, we'll have a protocol for that at the end. If our pituitary is not well taken care of, when we have those triggers, when we have those fight or flight emotions coming from our hypothalamus, that could really, really start to mess with that pituitary signal, okay? Now that signal is going to go down to our thyroid. So see how this is not just, what do I do for my adrenals, Jody, right? Do I just get more sleep? Do I knock myself out, right? No, it's not as simple as that. It is simple in what we can do, but it actually starts in our brain. It starts with the limbic portion. It starts with that emotional trigger. And I think everything in our body starts with that, even our gut. Okay. So the point is not to, band-aid approach these things. Obviously, like I'm not a big fan of that. The point is to take care of our organs, thyroid, adrenals, ovaries, testes, pituitary. The point is to take care of those organs so that when that negative messaging comes, our organ knows what to do with it in a healthy way, right? That's what we want to look for. So now we're at our thyroid, and I have to talk about the thyroid just for a little bit because this is very much attached to the adrenals. We're not doing a thyroid talk, but we have to talk about it because again, all of these are playing off of each other. So our thyroid is obviously, right here. And this is getting stimulation from our pituitary gland. So it's sending these messages telling the thyroid to make actual thyroid hormone. Now, I know there's probably some questions. Well, what do I do if I don't have a thyroid, Jody? You know what? Anybody know the answer to that? What do I do if I don't have an appendix? What do I do if I don't have a gallbladder? Somebody put in the chat what we're supposed to do when we don't have one. I'm going to see who gets it. So our thyroid is now act like you do. Good job, Daniela. She won tonight. And so our thyroid is now wanting to produce some thyroid hormone, right? This hormone is going to increase our metabolism. Now, too much of it, and we don't want that, right? Too little of it. So we want to be very much neutral and in the middle. Very possible to do that, right? So there's these things called hypo or hyperthyroid. Hyper is a little bit less common. Hypo is more common. And this is where this is often underdiagnosed too, because there's such a bell curve to it. So I really recommend if you're kind of honing in on your thyroid maybe a little bit right now, and you feel like you haven't gotten some answers for it, this is when I would say, again, who's in your corner? Who are you seeing? Are you seeing a naturopath? Are you seeing somebody who's looking at your glands and organs and body and all this stuff in a different way? Or are you going and seeing somebody and they're testing you on a bell curve, right? So we want to ask ourselves those questions too, to make sure that we're getting the best answers for us possible. So our thyroid is now going to want to interface with our adrenal glands, okay? Now, when it comes to the adrenal glands, okay, so we know it's fight or flight. We know they're doing things like adrenaline and cortisol and all these things, right? But imagine if we go back to the start and we go, okay, now I know, got to take care of the triggers, got to look at the stressors. What am I going to do to help support this emotion coming in to then this pituitary gland here to now I'm taking care and nourishing my thyroid. And now my adrenal glands are not going to go as haywire, right? Because all of this stuff is playing off of one another. So again, your adrenal glands are now playing off of your thyroid. And this is where we can, again, then get into, and we're going to talk about it in a second and really dig into some stuff that we can do for our adrenal glands and also other areas. I do want to mention food really quickly. Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing. So after your adrenals, then they're now going to interface, because remember those adrenal glands are producing like 50 hormones, right? Guess what that's going to start to affect? Your ovaries or your testes. Okay, so this is then where it goes down into the sex organs. All right. So believe it or not, yes, all of this stuff and emotions has a big impact on things like how fertile we are, how our menstrual cycles are, for men, their sperm count and things like that. So all of this stuff does have an impact on that as well. Um, Same thing, Megan, is we want to treat it like we have it, okay? Because all of this stuff is really still so interdependent on one another, and the body is really designed for everything to play off of one another, whether we actually have it in our body or not. Okay, so let's talk about food really quick, because this is important. Just like gut health, we have to look at the entire lifestyle. And there's some really big triggers and things that maybe some people haven't quite thought about yet. So we want to make sure we talk about it. Foods to avoid. This is across the board. This isn't just adrenals, but these foods in particular are very taxing on the thyroid and the adrenals. Sugar. That's number one, white processed sugar. Now, here's the thing. Jody, you mean I can't get my Frappuccino and have my Skittles and, my treat at night, my chocolate and all this stuff? Well, here's the thing. I would ask you this. I would say if you have never gone a week and have not documented the grams of sugar that you're taking in per day, you should probably try that, right? Because it's very eye-opening where sugars are hidden and what they are in. They are even in vitamins you're gonna buy at Trader Joe's or GNC, right? Like they're hidden in things that we think are healthy and good for us, and they're sugar. I was at Whole Foods last weekend, spent way too much money, and that's why I don't go to Whole Foods. And I was looking at their cereals because I was like, oh, maybe I'll bring the kids home a box of cereal. We do not eat cereal except for einkorn. And I thought, oh, I'll be the nice mom and I'll get some cereal, right? And I'm looking at their stuff, and I looked at the one that was like gluten-free, organic, and it was like, I would call it kind of a replacement for Fruity Pebbles or something. Looks like it would be super healthy, right? And all of those labels are very deceiving, but I looked at it and it had like 26 grams of sugar in a serving. Like that's a lot. That's actually a lot, right? So this is where looking at a label, looking at a pretty label, we just want to learn to like turn it over and actually look at the grams of sugar, look at the ingredients. Is it cane sugar? Is it, what is it, right? Start to get really familiar with that. And if you haven't documented the amount of grams that you eat in a week, try it. It's very eye-opening. And sugar is probably one of the biggest, right? Because what does sugar do? It causes inflammation constantly in the body, right? And it's very addicting. When I said something about like being addicted to that fight or flight response, being addicted to the wired but tired, sugar is more addicting to your brain than cocaine. For reals. That's how addicting it is. And any of you guys that have ever tried to go off sugar, you know, it's insanity, right? Because it's like, picture these like sugar module like things attached to our brain, and you're like trying to pull them off, and it's horrible to go off sugar, but that's how addicting it is, and that should tell us something, right? Okay, so sugar. Gluten, that's a big one, right? So gluten is going to convert to sugar in the body. It's going to cause inflammation. A lot of it's processed with heavy with pesticides, GMOs. Like it's very, very dirty. Okay, so think of gluten as very dirty, and we don't want that stuff in our body, in our system. I'll just go over a few, but alcohol is definitely a trigger for our adrenals, because alcohol is going to sometimes mask, or not sometimes, it will mask that fight or flight. It will mask the wired but tired a little bit. And so then we don't really sometimes realize we're in that, and we're still doing damage to our body. Ancient grains, somebody said, I mean, I'm a fan of like sprouted, fermented things. We use a lot of einkorn. Like I said, einkorn is, the way gluten used to be. Think of it that way, right? With the right chromosomes. So experiment with it. But as a whole, just know that overall gluten in this country is very tainted with pesticides, and it does convert to sugar in the body. Caffeine, right? So here's the thing. I love coffee. I love it. I think about coffee all the time, but it's like the smell that I love, so that's super addicting. And so I want my 1 cup in the morning, but I used to drink coffee all day long. I mean, like a pot of coffee all day long. That's where we were doing a little bit too much, right? We wanna just be mindful of that, okay? So caffeine is not the way that you get out of adrenal fatigue, guys. Caffeine's gonna make you more wired and tired. Fried food, processed food, these are things that across the board we need to be very mindful of. Okay, I would say as a whole, I am a huge fan. Oh, the other one I want to bring up really quick is artificial sweeteners. They are just as toxic as sugar. I use monk fruit. Monk fruit is my favorite. So if I were to start with some type of replacement, maybe this is new to you, I would absolutely look at monk fruit. It tastes like sugar, feels like sugar, looks like sugar. I love it. So artificial sweeteners are often very tainted with things. Okay, timing of your meals is really important. It helps with regulating your blood sugar and supporting your adrenal glands. You have to eat breakfast. We cannot skip breakfast. Eat regularly little meals throughout the day. I love grazing. We'll get into foods and things that we should do. But if you skip lunch, typically when you skip lunch, it reduces your energy levels and it forces your body to burn stored nutrients that you really want throughout the day. Now, the occasional, like, I know there's fasting diets and stuff like that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about day to day. You can't fast your whole life, right? You can't do some of these cleanses and all. You don't do it your whole life, right? You do them every once in a while. But as a day-to-day thing, we need to remember breakfast is important. We need to eat it, okay? And eating regularly throughout the day is going to actually keep your blood sugar balance and your cortisol levels balanced all day. So here's where we're going to get into something I'm a huge fan of, and that's keto. I know that we're not going to, this isn't a keto talk. I'm just saying in terms of food and dietary interventions, I'm a huge fan of keto. It is one of the biggest things that has balanced out my hormones, helped my adrenals. There's a good way to do keto and a bad way to do keto. So again, this isn't a keto talk, but I just want to throw that out there that keto does not mean eating fried bacon all day long. That's not proper keto. Okay. So we want to be doing lean meats. We want to be doing vegetables. We're obviously not eating sugar. That's part of your sugar detox on keto. But listen, man, if you have never been in ketosis, I am telling you, like your body, you feel like you are, I don't know, Superwoman or Superman. You really do. Like you have sustained energy. You fall asleep easily. Your hormones are balanced. Menstrual pain goes away. Skin looks amazing. You don't get wired and tired. You have clear emotional thought. Like keto is incredible. Okay. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But if you're not ready for that, then you want to be obviously choosing organic lean meats. We really want to choose organic meats because those have a lot of pesticides. I mean, yeah, pesticides, antibiotics, and things like that in them when they're not organic. So for meat, I'm always like, listen, if you're going to spend the money, at least buy organic meat. You know, stay away from the gluten. So you're going to eat vegetables, you're going to eat fruit, you're going to eat lean meats, you're going to eat nuts, you're going to have salad, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. And yes, you can do keto as a lifestyle. Absolutely. You can be in permanent keto for sure and do it in a healthy way. Versus, you know, when we're talking about a detox, you don't do that usually for more than 2 weeks. Okay. Let's go into routines. Let's get into our protocols and routines and talk through some things. So first things first, let me see if we have any questions. Okay. If anybody has some recommendations on keto, feel free to throw it out because some of you guys may have done it as well. I'd have to go back and look up some sites, which I can't do right now, but feel free to put some stuff in the chat box to help people. Okay, so let's think about protocols and what we're going to do, right? We understand that so much of this starts with emotions, triggers, pituitary gland, thyroid, adrenals, all that stuff, right? There's a lot of variables between each of us. Our bodies are not made the same. This is called a constitution, right? Not the constitution, a constitution. So this means that your constitution to your body is going to be different than my constitution to my body. That means that I'm going to respond differently to different supplements. I'm going to respond differently to emotional triggers. We just are made up differently. And guess what? There's not one single person on this phone call in here. Realize that. So there's not one single person on here that has the same constitution. It's like a snowflake. Every snowflake is different, right? So your personal needs and your routine is going to definitely look different. But this is where we go back to our intuition. This is where we go back to the building blocks. We go, okay, gut health, food, lifestyle, and then, consistency and my intuition, right? All that stuff together, and you have a plan. I promise you, you have a plan. So listen to your body as you're going through things, adjust as necessary. Remember this, just because a label says 2 capsules, your body might need 4, right? This is, if we're so stuck on following a label and being inside the box, we're going to miss a whole lot of opportunity for our health. So it doesn't mean that you have to, stray from it right away. You could start with 2. Okay, how did I feel after 2? Do I need to take 3 tomorrow? Maybe I should try 4 tomorrow. See how I feel, right? So you're kind of playing with it and listening to your intuition, to what your body needs. Start somewhere though. So we're going to start somewhere. We're going to start with a routine, and you're going to see where you fit into that. 30 to 90 days is obviously really important in terms of consistency and creating habits, but it takes around 6 months. It takes around 6 months for your cells to permanently change in your body. So remember that too, right? 30 days is like creating a habit, right? 60 days, we're starting to see some results and things are starting to click. 90 days, we're like, yeah, this is awesome. Somewhere in there, we've hit some hurdles for sure. Somewhere in there, we're like, I fell off the wagon, Jody, and I went to In-N-Out. It's going to happen. It's okay. But, around that 90-day mark, we're starting to see some results. And then around 6 months is when we're starting to actually see permanent cellular change in our body. So that's how long it takes, guys. This isn't quick fix. Health isn't meant to be quick fix. Our bodies are evolving all the time, and we're just like in it to win it every day. Okay. So first, we're going to begin with removing subtle traumas. Okay. If you have an oil handy, I would love for you to grab it. How do I not have it? Oh, yes, I do. Grab an oil. Okay. And it doesn't matter what it is, honestly, as long as it's not spicy and gonna like burn your eyeballs out. So grab something and you're gonna put it in the palm of your hand. Okay. Maybe even write in the chat which one you're grabbing so people can get some inspiration, but you're gonna rub it in the palm of your hand. Okay. And here's what you're gonna do. This is a very simple, subtle way to remove traumas. You've got your oil. You're gonna think for a moment, I'm going to think of my trauma. I'm going to think of something that triggered me today. Or let's say that I had an experience today and I'm like, oh, that makes me feel like when I was like 10 years old and such happened, right? Like let that come to the surface. Start to think of that. And you're going to, okay, inhale about 3 to 5 really deep breaths, maybe even 10 if you want to, be an overachiever. Okay. And then you're going to put one hand on your belly. So we pretty much consistently use our belly for most things, but one hand on your belly, one hand on your forehead, close your eyes, bring up that moment in history, and you're going to breathe in and out forcefully like 3 times, okay? 3 times. And you're letting that go. So it's this training my brain. I'm letting that moment go. I'm letting that trauma go. These are acupressure points, right? That are really important. And they just really connect with like that gut feeling, that tummy and that forehead. Okay. And that's just how we can start to remove emotional traumas every day. You don't need a professional to help you with that. You can do that for yourself every day. Grab an oil, think of that moment, that stressor, that fight or flight, whatever it was. Breathe it out 3 times. Breathe. You would be shocked at how fast your system resets just from doing that. Okay. So we're going to first start with removing subtle traumas every day, right? Because we have to start with the limbic system, guys. Remember, it starts there. We have to address our emotions, and that's going to have a domino effect on the rest of our body. we are going to then look at our diet. Okay, so I'm taking you through a step process. Okay, first things, every day I can remove subtle emotional traumas. Secondly, I can look at my diet. I can go, all right, I'm going to document my sugar for a week and see how much, or I'm going to, hey, I'm going to go keto, I'm doing it. Or, I'm just going to eat whole 30, right? Or I'm going to just remove gluten for right now. You have to do at least for 6 months though. I'm just letting you know. We're going to look at our diet, our food, because that has such an impact on overall hormone balance. Okay. The next one is exercise. So let's talk about this for a second, because when you are in adrenal fatigue or you're having adrenal trauma, I've learned the best thing isn't to go do a heavy duty CrossFit workout. It might feel really good at the time, but it's actually taxing your adrenals more, right? So there's this time period where we need to let our body rest, okay? And that means doing a walk, 30-minute walk out in nature, walking along the beach, hiking in the mountains, not strenuous, doing yoga, not strenuous, but just, a gentle yoga. Letting our body and our adrenals rest and reset is really important. So if we're in that cycle of wired and tired, it typically doesn't work out really well if you're doing super aggressive workouts. Okay. So we want to be really mindful of that. And some things to look at when it comes to, in particular, some poses that we can do. So this is going to be really fun. I'm going to show you this. My favorite to reset your entire body, and try this, by the way, tonight before you go to bed. Promise you this will work like a charm. I don't care what time it is where you're at. You're going to put your legs up the wall. Okay. I can't really demonstrate. And I have really funky boots on right now because I'm freezing in my house. But let's say I'm at the wall, right? So here's the wall. And I'm super flexible too, by the way. I'm going to put my butt all the way against the wall, right? Here's the wall. Here's my butt. And my legs are going to go straight up the wall. Okay. So it's just called legs up the wall. Do that, maybe some relaxing music for about 15 to 20 minutes. Oh my gosh, it is incredible for resetting our entire system. Another one that you can do is frog. Can't really demonstrate that right now, but imagine you're like in a frog position, because that's going to actually get into your kidneys and start to affect your adrenals. And then another one that you can try is, okay, so it's a version of frog, but imagine you have one leg up next to kind of your like chest area. So I've got like my knee here and one leg is straight back, and you do one at a time for about 5-10 minutes, maybe even put some nutmeg and rosemary and clove over those adrenals. And it's just going to help to reset the kidneys and the adrenals. Okay. So that's exercise. Lifestyle and environmental factors. We have to talk about this because this does have an impact on everything in the body. So if we have not yet cleaned out our home of chemicals, not only is that, causing things like skin irritations, it can cause that, it can cause headaches, but that's gonna also sort of put us in a fight or flight because we're inhaling toxins. It's affecting our body, it's affecting our emotions. So if we have not cleaned out our home yet, we wanna make sure that we do that. And that's for me, I don't know about you, but I got to the point where I was like, I'm done. And I threw everything in one bucket and I was just done. Right? Some people have to do it one at a time. So whatever works for you. All right, let's get into supplements really quick. So we're gonna first talk about Thyromin, because Thyromin is obviously really great for the thyroid, and we have to nourish our thyroid. Actually, no. Back up. We're gonna do the pituitary. So we've got our limbic portion, right? We've got our emotional triggers releasing, okay? Pituitary. So pituitary, remember, that's releasing a lot of hormones. It's kind of like telling the thyroid what to do, right? So most people, a lot of people actually have some pituitary damage. If you've ever experienced concussions, if you played sports, sometimes even babies coming through the birth canal can experience a little bit of pituitary damage. So this is something that, not a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to take care of my pituitary. And one of the things that I have found to be really, really helpful is obviously DHEA is super helpful. That's going to be in some supplements. So you're looking for DHEA. Secondly is an oil like frankincense pressed to the roof of the mouth, sacred frankincense. It's just really like, it resets sort of how our limbic brain is kind of just receiving messages and stuff. So I just take some on my thumb, press it to the roof of my mouth a couple times a day. but that's, we want to feed and nourish our pituitary gland. So next is the thyroid. So we want to take care of our thyroid and really nourish it as well. When it comes to thyromin, think about this. You've got right here on my, oh, actually, no, I think it's on my screen. I'm going to walk you through a couple of these really quick. I'm not going to screen share, but I'm just going to tell you what's in it. Because if you've never looked at it before. So you have iodine and vitamin E. So something that's really important to remember when it comes to vitamin E is that vitamin E is kind of like, it's really food for the thyroid, okay? Vitamin E is like a free radical scavenger in the body, okay? So not only does vitamin E help to keep our cells healthy and clean, it's also really, really crucial, and the thyroid needs it kind of like food, okay? So that's in thyromin for a reason. We need vitamin E, and a lot of people, you can take too much of it, but it's, unless you're really like overdoing it, you're probably gonna be fine. Actually, we'll try to get to it at the very end if you guys aren't, you can let me know if you're not aware how to self-muscle test yourself. We can do it as a little review. And that can tell you, sort of give you an idea of how much to take or if you need it that day. Okay, and then it also has iodine. So iodine is a really protective measure for our thyroid. We know like when people are exposed to radiation, they get iodine, right? Well, nowadays we're exposed to a lot of low level stuff in the world. We're exposed to low level stuff in Wi-Fi. We're exposed to low level stuff when we're flying on airplanes. Sometimes it's living next to certain power things next to our home. So we're getting more exposure, and we're getting really low level exposure, but chronically throughout the day. So we want to protect our thyroid, and iodine is really great for that. And then you've got something in there called the porcine. So it's an animal extract. It is an animal product. Now, again, if you have a personal conviction against animal products, totally understand that. You get to choose what you want to try and not try. But an animal extract like porcine was used a lot before the 1960s. And it was right around in the 1960s that they came up with something called synthetic hormones, right? And so, yay, the invention of synthetic hormones. Well, it doesn't exactly work very well for a lot of people. And we want to be really careful what we're taking synthetically or not synthetically, how much synthetics we're taking and our body is exposed to. So this is a natural porcine. And this is where it's, really acting as like that like glandular for the thyroid, okay? So thyromin, I have found to be very, very helpful if we are looking at and honing in a little bit more on like, oh, I think I really want to focus on my thyroid. For me personally, I prefer to take it at night. In general, you might feel a little bit restless. I've heard of some people feeling restless for like a week, and then it sort of like goes away and evens out. So again, you want to give things time, right? Not everything's going to be 100% magic bullet, gonna work like the moment we use it, right? Take some consistency. So if that happens, give it a little time, but I personally prefer to have that at night while our body is regenerating. The next one to help support the thyroid, as you guys know, this one probably very popular, is Endoflex. And you've also got Endoflex Vitality. Remember, it's the same oil, just a different label. Same thing, you've got frankincense Vitality. But you can just put a few drops over your thyroid area. Now, again, remember, if you're like, I don't have a thyroid, Jody, for me personally, I would, as if I had one, right? I'd still want to support that area because so much is happening around it. It's still interfacing with stuff. So I still personally would use it for myself. But this has things like spearmint. Spearmint helps to increase our metabolic rate and activity, not in a bad way, balancing rate, right? So we're looking for balance in everything, and that's what oils love to do. They love to balance us. You've got myrtle, which is also really, really good to nourish things like the ovaries and, again, like your thyroid and stuff like that. And then you've got nutmeg in there. Now, nutmeg, ironically, is also really great for the adrenal glands too. So, and then German chamomile. German chamomile is it has a very high amount of antioxidants in it. And so you can imagine what that can do for the thyroid. Oh, sorry, I thought Wendy answered, thanks. Okay, so now we're down to the adrenal glands, and we're gonna talk about cortisol first. It's one thing I cannot live without. And I would recommend cortisol tends to go out of stock because it is so popular. I wonder why. We're all under so much stress. Um, but cortisol is one I will not go without. So I usually backfill and have at least 2 bottles on hand just in case, because I can't imagine my life without it, honestly. Those headaches would come back and it wouldn't be a pretty picture. So cortisol is, think about it all in the name, right? So what does our adrenals do? They're gonna produce cortisol. What do we wanna do? We wanna really balance that. We don't want too much of it. We don't want too little. We want just the right amount. And sometimes our adrenals can get into a position where they're just not doing what they're supposed to do, and we need to give them a little love. So I feel like the cortisol is going to help when we're looking at that low level of stuff that we're dealing with every day. This is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to get that in check. We're trying to balance that so that's not continuing this cycle in our adrenals and this fight or flight. Okay, so that's what cortisol does so beautifully. It has, let's see, actually, I'm going to read it because it has some really cool ingredients. Pregnenolone. So this is it's a really important hormone, guys, right? And it's something that it's like a precursor to DHEA. So this is really important in just the overall hormone production of our body, and especially if things aren't working very well. And then phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine. Oh my gosh, I need glasses. These are my blue light glasses, not my real glasses. um, so these are really important as well for protecting our adrenals. Black cohosh, clary sage. You guys know like how great these are for overall hormones. Canadian fleabane, frankincense, fennel. Like this thing is just a powerhouse of just really, really, really helping to nourish the adrenals with exactly what it needs and helping to control that overstimulus, right? Now, with cortisol, one thing that I have noticed, number one, men think they don't need it. It has always been like it's a women's supplement, but you guys, how many of you guys have a man in your life and you're like, dude, you're so stressed out all the time, right? Men have adrenal issues too, right? Kids have adrenal challenges as well, especially with the fast-paced world and the electronics and the video games and I don't know, all the stuff happening, peer pressure, social media. So, you know what that's going to affect? Fight or flight, adrenals. Like imagine playing Battlefront constantly and you're like shooting people and whatever, and you're in fight or flight constantly, right? Or those triggers we get on social media, kids get them too. Okay. So it's not just us, it's not just women that experience adrenal challenges, it's men too, and it's also children. So I've long heard like, oh, cortisol is only for women. That's not true, guys. Okay. Men need it too. When it comes to your children, that's going to be a personal decision. I would probably say, we start with some of like the lifestyle modification stuff first, because that has such a huge impact on children and they really respond fast to lifestyle changes, dietary changes, gut health changes, that kind of stuff, right? Before maybe we go to something like cortisol, there's also oils, which we'll get to too. I like to take now again, cortisol is a really good example of I take what my body needs. Okay. And I also like to take it at night. Now, it doesn't mean you can't take it in the morning. It doesn't mean you can't take it, twice a day or whatever. In general, if it's your first time sort of exploring a topic like this, or maybe using a supplement that's new, I always say use something, especially when it's a more of a glandular type thing, right? Maybe about 6 to 8 weeks, and then take a break and see how you feel, right? Because we want to also see how our body's going to balance when it's not taking something. And the goal, guys, is that we're not like, taking pills all day long and like this is so hard and complicated, and it doesn't need to be that way. There's things that we're going to balance out. There's things that we're going to take every day for prevention. Like we're going to look at things differently, right? But the goal is to get our body to a place where it's doing what it needs to do on its own. And how we are supporting it is through the daily prevention activities, not like, oh, I need to stop this cycle I'm in. We want to stop it, but then we want our body to be able to do what it's meant to do on its own. And we're going to have it do that when we're doing the prevention stuff over here and the lifestyle modifications. All right. So I always say, 6 to 8 weeks, kind of go off it for 2 to 4 weeks and see how you feel. I take anywhere from my body craves, like, depends, 5 to 6 at night sometimes. If I'm traveling, it might be a little bit more. If I'm traveling, I might take 2 in the morning and then 4 at night. I'm just kind of playing with it. So you play with it. But I respond really well when I take it at night. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about oils really quick. So there's a really great protocol I love to do. I mean, it's kind of the gold standard for how to nourish our adrenals, and it's clove, nutmeg, and rosemary, right? So clove is massively high in antioxidants, the ORAC scale. Every oil has an ORAC, and clove is very, very high, which means it's going to do an amazing job at nourishing our adrenals and giving it the food it needs, right? And also, what do antioxidants do? They go after free radicals in the body. They go after the junk. They want to help. They want to help our bodies just be as clean as possible. And antioxidants are going in there and scavenging for all the bad stuff. Same thing with Ningxia Red, right? All the antioxidants. So clove, nutmeg, our adrenals just tend to respond really well to the constituents in nutmeg, and then rosemary as well. Now, if you only had clove and nutmeg, I would say that's 2 things to start with. Rosemary is just kind of an added bonus. All right. This is one that I have absolutely used a lot on my now 13-year-old son. And we're in that preteen. I don't even know who he is half the time. And so I want to really nourish his adrenals because I notice when I'm nourishing his adrenals, he is a much nicer boy. So we are doing that a lot. But this is something where if you're looking at your child, and I would say this is probably going to start right around those ages where they're getting busier in their lives. It might be sports, it might be busier in school, extracurricular activities. Maybe they are spending time on social media. Maybe they are playing video games or whatever. Like, we're looking at what their lifestyle is. I don't know, typically right around, I'd say 11, 12, 13, we start to see some of this daily stress popping up in kids and how they're responding to it. So this might be something gentle and easy to start out with, is the clove, nutmeg, and rosemary, and you just rub it over the adrenals. Now, a couple things. I mean, I'm not a DIYer. I'm on the go. Can you tell I have adrenal fatigue all the time? Let's go. I got stuff to do. And so I put the oils in my hands and I just rub back here over my adrenals. You can certainly take a dropper bottle and you could make a blend. I would not over dilute it. I would be very careful. Remember, when you over dilute something, it takes longer to get into your body, longer for you to feel the results, and then you might give up. So I see a lot of problem with over dilution, and we want to be really careful that we're not doing that. Okay. So that's your oil. Okay. So you've got cortisop, you've got oils. The other things that I would just come back to, and this is our preventative, right, is Ningxia Red. So Ningxia, is going to have your 21 essential minerals, significant levels of thiamine, B1, niacin, vitamin C. This is also around 15, 16% protein. And your wolfberry is one of the richest known sources of plant protein. So don't always think of protein as animal, right? Because there's plant sources of protein too. And there's times where we're going to obviously want to have animal sources of protein because that gives us different nutrients and good fats and amino acids and stuff like that. But with the wolfberry, it is one of the highest known sources of plant proteins. It's also going to be really rich in amino acids, which are building blocks to protein in our body. Really good source of potassium. So again, these things, right? Like, just think of overall vitamin and mineral stuff, guys. Most people are so deficient in vitamins and minerals. Like, that is really kind of at the base level. If we just increased the amount of vitamins and minerals and we got it from good sources, right? So I'm not talking your, dinosaur multivitamin from Target, right? Like a good source of vitamins and minerals, and we nourish our body with that, and we flood our body with that, that would take care of so many things, you guys. This is just vitamins and minerals, okay? And we don't have to like overthink it. We can do it very simply. I personally, that's my sort of daily protocol is Ningxia Red and Master Formula, and I'm getting everything I need, pretty much everything I need. Now, I will add in Super B, and here's what I would say about Super B. And it kind of goes into that sort of MTHFR conversation that usually comes up. And if you guys have heard of MTHFR, it's just really how our body methylates or doesn't methylate very well, how we can absorb things. Audrey Lincoln at 13 takes Master Formula, just to answer your question, and he loves it. So when it comes to B vitamins, here's a little tip and suggestion for you. We don't know how our body's going to respond to something until we try it, right? A lot of people are very deficient in overall broad spectrum B vitamins. A lot of people aren't getting a really good quality, right? So from a natural food source like folate, okay? Some people truly can't really process stuff. We're all going to be different, right? We have different constitutions. But when we're looking at what nourishes the adrenals, there's some very critical things that nourishes. Oils, right? Clove, nutmeg, and rosemary, cortisol can help that fight or flight, okay? But when you're talking about the daily stuff, okay, the daily stuff is your adrenals are craving B vitamins. They're craving things like greens and choline. So multi-greens is a really great option. And they're craving things like antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. And so that's your Master Formula and your Ningxia Red, right? So when it comes to B vitamins, a little trick you can try, and this is sort of what I had to do to find my level, because there's days where one feels pretty good, and then there's days where I'm like, I need like 6. So you just don't know. And what you can do is you can sort of take your B vitamins and load your system until you feel really fatigued. And that's how you know you've taken too much. So if you're taking B vitamins and you're still feeling really, really tired, you might be taking too much B. So you want to pull it back a little bit and see if that adjusts your tired level, okay? You're kind of looking for that sweet spot where you're feeling like you've got sustained energy throughout the day. You are not getting into some of those adrenal things. Megan takes one every other day. Again, I mean, I'm cool when I take like 5 or 6 a day. That's just me, but that doesn't mean that it's all the time, right? So kind of play with that a little bit, because I notice when it comes to B vitamins, there's always this sweet spot that we have. And so you can do that little test on yourself to see, am I tired still? Maybe I'll pull back. Maybe I'll try it every other day, and maybe that's enough for my body, okay? All right, so we talked about Super B. I would just also throw in there, if you need extra mineral supplementation, it's really important to take something like Mineral Essence. We can definitely get minerals from food. I mean, if you're gonna go to town and eat all the kelp and the leafy stuff, sure. But I don't know how much of that we normally eat on a daily basis or how much we want to eat. So Mineral Essence is a really good option. Remember, you can also rub it on your belly and it absorbs in your body. You can put it in capsules. You can mix it in something like grapefruit juice, so it's a little bit more palatable. You can take a bath in it. Great tip for kids who need extra minerals in them, and it's really hard to get something in a child. And this is also like special needs children. And even my experience with trying to get my son to take all of this stuff when we decided to go the natural route. How am I going to get all this stuff in him, right? We had a lot of food palate issues, sensory issues. And so we can do some of these tricks, like take a bath in it or rub it on the bottom of the feet just to get some minerals in the system, because that's going to have that really positive domino effect on so many things, because so much comes down to they're just not getting enough vitamins and minerals. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a breath because now it's going on over an hour. I'm sorry, guys. There's so much to talk about, but let's do some question and answer if we have some. Wendy, I don't know. You've been answering them, I think. So you guys can unmute if you want, or ask a question in the chat.
Hey, Jody, this is amazing. This is Daniela. So
Hey,
thank you for this. Is awesome. I love it. This is my life right now. I mean, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism. I've been doing all the things for for a long time as well. Just kind of knowing my body. So my question is, what I haven't really gotten down yet is the muscle testing. So if you have a quick trick of I mean, I watch videos. I do all the things. So you guys, this is super helpful. Like I do it with my kids, but I feel like maybe Jody's got a little trick or something that
I don't know if it's a trick. I mean, this is
well,
the easiest way. But if you guys all stand up, and you don't have to if you can't right now, but let's just say you stand up, and you're gonna just stand normally, and maybe try to close your eyes so you can sort of balance your body a little bit. And first start with saying something that's a true statement. So I'm gonna say something like, "My name is Jody," and I fall forward. Like I can't even control not falling forward. It's a
okay.
true statement. My body is going forward. And I do something like, "My name is Daniela," and my body automatically goes backwards, right? It's a false statement. Okay. So then I go, "Do I need cortisol tonight?" No, I don't need it tonight, right? So that's kind of an idea. Or I might take my multigreens. Does my body need 2 multigreens? Oh, that was kind of neutral. Should I take 3 multigreens? Oh, I fell forward. Like you cannot trick your body. You literally can't trick your body from true or false statements. So if you've never done something as simple as that, start with that, play with it. I do it all the time for my kids too. Marshall's been home with a little bit of a fever, and he caught like what his dad had. And it's just, we're doing all the normal things, right? We're making sure we're not eating sugar. We're drinking lots of Ninja Red. We're taking detox baths and baking soda. I'm putting oils all down the spine every hour, doing the extra probiotics. But then I might grab something like, what did I grab earlier? I grabbed like a homeopathic, because I also love to mix in homeopathics and flower essences and all the things. And I'm just like, does Marshall need this? And it's a yes or no, right?
So you do it for him. You do it for the kids when you're doing it. Like I
Yep.
did learn this technique actually in England. I totally forgot about it. So I was like, does this really work? Am I tricking myself? But you're right. But I would have my kids hold it. Do you do it for your son or your children? You just
It depends. So if they're old enough to like not be silly, and they're old enough to stand there where they can ask that yes or no question, then yes. Otherwise,
okay.
I do it and I still get the answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. I totally have forgotten about this technique and that's awesome. Thank you.
It's like a surefire way to even, like, let's say you're going to get cortisol and you're like, I don't even know where to start. You start with, do I need cortisol?
Mhm.
Should
Yeah.
I take 2? Should I take 6? Should I take the whole bottle? No, don't do that. But yeah, it's really a very surefire way.
Awesome.
What if you say a truth and don't move? Sometimes, sometimes if it's the first time you're doing this, it just takes a little practice to like really calm your body down, because remember, like our brain can kind of trick us too sometimes, where we're like, oh, I'm doing some muscle testing. I'm gonna tell myself no. Like the brain's gonna, so try to just really practice, get your body, really calm. And yeah, it's very accurate. Do you have to hold the item? I do say I would prefer you hold the item. Yes. Yeah. You can also do a pendulum. I don't know if you guys have, so like you can get, let's say a necklace, right? And something heavy on the bottom. And a lot of times I'll do this too. And I'll just hold it, and I'll just be like, I'll ask a question, right? And the thing will start to move. I didn't even do anything, but the thing will start to move. And it's still kind of the same energetic process. All right. Any other questions? That was a lot of information, guys. I'm sorry. I can't help it.
No,
I
it was
actually had a question regarding the dry brushing.
What about
So
dry brushing?
I wanted to know, does it really help the adrenals? And if so, what? Somebody had mentioned there was like a cellulite one, but I'm not really worried about cellulite. I just for like more health reasons.
Dry brushing is really good for health reasons. Yeah, even beyond cellulite. It is really, really good for calming our nervous system down. So it's amazing for anxiety and stress. Yeah.
So what oil would you recommend putting on the brush?
I mean, one for sure, one that's not going to irritate your skin. So I tend to lean towards like spruce oils, like black spruce is one of my favorites, Sacred Mountain. They're also really good for those parts of the brain um, to help just calm it down.
Okay. All right.
And I
Thank
want
you.
to add, if you don't
Something
mind,
like something that's not irritating to you.
I know you
Okay.
said, Chantel, that it wasn't about cellulite, but there are
Oh.
detoxifying oils in Cellulite Magic, which is why it's so great.
Oh, okay. I was so
Don't-
confused. I'm like, no, it's not
Yeah.
for cellulite.
Don't rule that out. It's just a really, I've been dry brushing for years and I do use Cellulite Magic.
Really?
And whatever oil I kind of in the mood for, I just kind of grab, but that I keep that handy.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Cellulite or any of the massage oils for sure,
Yeah.
but Cellulite Magic, yeah. Dry skin on the heels. I mean, it can be like, again, it's one of those things where that could just be your constitution, Missy, where that's how your body, that's just where it goes. That's kind of what it does, right? Like for me, when it's hormones, I tend to get stuff here, like super dry skin, really irritated and itchy. Just kind of depends. Yeah. Okay.
Jody, you kind of got me with was it the clove, nutmeg, and rosemary are good for dragging sort of teenagers. So my son used to let me do the focus rollers and all of that, and I loved it when he'd go to school, and now he's 14 and will do nothing. So I do like sneak attack thieves roller on the feet when they're to wake him up in the morning. Where do you apply these particular oils? Because I would make a roller, and again, like just if he's asleep, I would do it.
Yeah. If you can get to his lower back, I would just rub it all over his lower back, because then you're going to definitely get the adrenals and all other things. Yeah. I mean, the bottom of the feet is always a great place too. Like, remember guys, if we can't access a space, maybe I can't get this like one spot in my back and my husband's not home or something, the bottom of the feet is always a fail safe. But yeah, if you can get on the lower back, it's good. I know I kept you guys a little bit longer, sorry, but I'm here for
No,
it.
good
I'm
stuff.
here for it. I'm going to be wired. Just kidding. I'm not. Any other questions you guys have? Yes, incorporate some of those tonight for sure. Now, again, here's your challenge. Okay, so we'll just end on this. Your challenge is, because I really should put my kids to bed, legs up the wall. So as soon as this is done, go put your legs up the wall. If you have to like lock yourself in the bathroom so nobody bothers you, do that. But give yourself 10 minutes if you can. I mean, sometimes I'll do it for 30 because it feels so good. And put your legs up the wall and then see how you sleep tonight. It's magical.
Do you use oils when you do that? Jody, do you like throw a couple like on your forehead, like a cedarwood or
Oh,
anything? Or
totally. Like I make it a whole spa experience. Oh yeah. It's like my meditation.
it's
Yeah.
10 o'clock here, so this girl's going legs up. So I'm going to.
Yes.
I'm like,
I'm like a foresty spruce person. You give me any spruce oil and I'm a happy camper, and my body just responds to it super fast.
yes,
Yep.
Northern Lights sits in my car in the
Yes.
cup holder.
Yep. So legs up the wall tonight. If you have cortisop or Thyromin, again, maybe go back and revisit how am I using it. Maybe muscle test yourself tonight. That's another action item, and see what you should take tonight. And then I would recommend starting tomorrow, like go through some of these notes that you wrote down and go, okay, what is my intuition telling me to really focus on the most right now? Is my intuition saying I should really look at my diet and document how much sugar and gluten and all that stuff I'm eating in a week? Or, and really make that my focus to get that under control and see what that can do for my body? Am I like the person that I've been doing this some time, but I know I need to try keto. I really should. Maybe this is your time to do it. Maybe you're like, I'm done. I'm doing it. I need to balance my hormones. Enough is enough. By the way, adrenal taxation, where do we hold it? Where do we hold the fat cells? Around our tummy. So that can be an indication as well. If we're having a really hard time, no matter what we do, of losing some of this stuff around our belly. Okay. So yeah, just see what speaks to you and start there, baby steps, but be consistent with those baby steps. Okay. All right. I will let you guys go. Thank you for being on. I know that was long and
Thank you, Jody.
I could talk for hours. So I appreciate you guys' time and let me know if you need anything. And we'll see you on lots more calls. See you guys later.